let's look at our code and let's take this next huge step and let's create something undeniably and unbearably gorgeous and new together right now. So let's read together, wherever you are, okay? We're breathing, right? The past, right? Present and future are first principles and first values of reality, right? First principles and first values. The past, present, and future are first principles and first values of reality. The past calls us, the present calls us, and the future calls us. We're called by our past self, by our present self, and by our future self, right? And my dear friend Sally told me she's doing some important work, who's with us today, right? In particular dimensions of this expression, which is gorgeous and so exciting, right? And so exciting, right? That's so exciting to actually, there's 3 calls. There's my past self, my present self, and my future self. Unique self incorporates all 3, right? Each call has a shadow expression and a light expression. Homo, amor responds to the call of the past, the call of the present, and the call of the future in every instant of eternal time, because eternal time, the now, isn't what we call the present, right? It's the full presence of eternity that includes all the past and all the future. So responding to only 1 or even 2 of the calls generates distortion. Clarity and sacred power only emerge from the full response to the Holy Trinity of past, present, and future calls. We can only be in full ethos. We can only be in full delight. We can only be in full joy. We can only heal suffering when we're responding to past, present, and future together. So let's feel into this and let's see if we can recapitulate a little bit, because it's super important to continue from where we were and to then pick up from where we are. So I want to add something to this just before, or actually as part of our beginning of this next step. So I want to add something to this, which is the idea of a story, right? We've been talking a lot about the new story, and I want to talk about, just for a second, stories in general. Human beings think, not in mathematics, although mathematics is one expression of deep human thought. Mathematics lives in us, even as we live in the cosmos, and mathematics lives in the cosmos, right? And that's really important. We talked last week about science's implicit understanding of the intimate universe. And it's unbelievably important, right? Which is this implicit knowing that I, as a mathematician, for example, can map the whole cosmos through the mathematics that are moving in my mind. And the only reason the scientist can map the whole cosmos, right, through, for example, mathematics, is because the whole cosmos already lives in the scientist. The scientist is already intimately participating in cosmos, and cosmos is already literally participating in the scientist. Right? So one of the ways we think is in mathematics, but where does mathematics live? Mathematics lives in us, and mathematics lives in the cosmos. So there's an intimate, the reason human science works is because we are cosmic humans. Did you ever get that sentence? The reason human science works is because we're cosmic humans. Human science wouldn't work if we weren't cosmic humans. Does that make sense, everyone? So one of the ways we think is we think in mathematics. And one of the ways reality thinks and feels, we think and feel in mathematics. Pythagoras wasn't wrong when he said music, that is the sound, the melody of mathematics, right? So the cosmos also thinks and feels in mathematics, and music is the melody of mathematics. So that's step 1. But here's step 2. It gets, and now it starts to get kind of crazy beautiful. There's a second way, right? An equally important way that we think and we feel. We think and feel in stories. We think and feel in stories. And that's actually our first default. It's our first way in. It's our first portal, right, to deep knowing and understanding reality. And not only do we think and feel in stories, and we talked about this about a year ago, we did a special sacred text study, and Zohar, Rachel, Kirsten is hopefully going to be starting soon our renewed sacred text study for our inner group that does sacred text. So those of you who remember, there were about 10 of us there, right? When we were doing the sacred text study, we talked about what I call the narrative arc of cosmos, right? There's a narrative arc, right? Cosmos is not just facts or disjointed facts or chance happenstances that seem to bunch together. It's not just a place in which we need to transcend to get to the world to come. For science, there is no, right? Exterior science sees no story in cosmos. Religion sees no story that's of ultimate value. It's a story that you got to move beyond to touch eternity. And Homo amor, right, transcends the best of science and the best of religion and actually notices for the first time a narrative arc to cosmos. We call those the four big bangs. Those of you who are familiar with that part of cosmoerotic humanism, the first big bang, right, which is matter. The second big bang, which is life. The third big bang, which is self-reflective mind. And the fourth big bang, which is the new human and the new humanity, the triumph of self-reflective mind, Homo sapien in Homo amor, in this new human and new humanity, right, who is unique self and evolutionary unique self and everything we've talked about for these years. But just stay with us, right? So in the deepest understanding of Homo amor, there is a story. And now science at its leading edge and religion at its leading edge is stepping out of its old positions. And we're trying to articulate from within science and within spirit this narrative arc to cosmos. There's a story in cosmos. That's really important because story is an unbelievably important structure. And story holds value. So one of the primary ways we communicate first values and first principles is through stories. Everyone get that sentence? It's great. It's really exciting. It's like wildly exciting, right? We communicate first values and first principles through stories. Stories hold, right, first values and first principles. Does that make sense to everyone? So we're going to talk today, right? And we're now at just about at the top of the hour. And we spent at the top of the hour about 20 minutes talking about first values and first principles. The first value and first principle we're talking about is the past, the present, and the future. And stories hold first values and first principles. And the particular first value and first principle we're talking about is that reality's inherent structure has past and present and future. And so this week, we're going to talk about this inherent structure. We're going to deepen our conversation from last week. But if you're new this week, that's total perfect. We're going to deepen our conversation. We're going to both tell stories, but we're also going to practice. And one of the things that we really want to start bringing more and more, we practice when we pray, we practice when we chant, we practice when we write in the chat box, we practice when we participate, but we want to, together with first values and first principles, there's first practices, right? First practices, right? And first practices, and Jackie, you and I have talked briefly about the importance of practice, right? And we need to actually both hear the story and do the practice. Okay, so we're gonna do practice today. So what did we set up, right? What did we set up in our last conversation on first principles and first values, right? They absolutely go together, Jackie, absolutely. What did we set up? So we set up 3 forms of science. So if you want to look up the first week on past, present, and future, right? That's 215. Now we're in 216 second week. Okay, we got it. We got our numbers. Okay, so here we go. So psychology focuses on the past. The glory of psychology, the gorgeousness of psychology, is that it turns the past not into an irrelevant dead time. It turns the past into a living time, which we can enter into and find healing and transformation. That's psychology's great gift. We turn to the past. And we mentioned in week 215, which we've now established was last week, we mentioned in week 215 that there are about 10 different modalities of psychology, but all of them agree on that we're looking at the past. What they disagree on is how do you enter the past to actually access the past as your most powerful modality of healing and transformation, okay? And the word actually past, by the way, in the original Hebrew, the word Hebrew comes from the word ivri, and ivri, Hebrew, means avar, past. But the word past, as is always in the original Hebrew, compresses 2 distinct meanings to communicate within the structure of language itself. And Wittgenstein, right, loves Hebrew from that perspective. Within the structure of language itself, you see the nuance and the nature of reality. Story holds first principles and values, and language holds first principles and first values. So the word Hebrew, ivri, right, Abram, who's the Hebrew, also means avar. It's the same 3 letters in Hebrew, and avar means past. Avar means past, And avar also means to cross over, to traverse, right? When I want to cross over to the other side, or when I want to get to the other side, I want to move beyond the swamp. I want to move beyond the monkey mind. I want to move beyond the contractions. I want to move beyond the repetitive wheel of the past in which I'm stuck like a rat in a maze. Right? If you remember that 1960s, we'll date ourselves, right? I was 2 years old, right? 1960s, like a rat in a maze, Simon and Garfunkel song, right? Who remembers that lyric? Who remembers that lyric from Simon and Garfunkel? Must have been, oh my God. I mean, I started listening to Simon and Garfunkel in like the mid 70s, but it was in the mid 60s. You remember it, Suzanne? Like a rat in a maze, right? We're like a rat in a maze in that we keep following, right? We keep following old patterns. It's a repetitive cycle. What takes us avar to the other side, it says the original Hebrew, right, is the past. And psychology picks up on this strand in ancient wisdom, which was latent in ancient wisdom, but didn't exist. There wasn't a full psychology, and says if you enter the past, that can be the portal to the other side, right? And there's really important psychological systems, right, that you can actually enter to do, right, work on getting to the other side. So for example, Tom, you're now doing core energetics, right, which is one modality, right, of getting to the other side. Right, it's one way of going to the past, right, within the body and the character structures, right, and getting to the other side. Okay, so the past is unbelievably important in getting to the other side. What's the shadow? What's the shadow, everybody? What's the shadow? Anybody? What's the shadow? The shadow is I'm stuck in the past, right? Obsession. The shadow is, right, I'm like a rat in a maze. I can't get out. Right after I've worked out with this therapist for 5 years and they know all my stories, right? I'm going to go to another therapist and tell them all the stories again, and then all the stories again, and then all the stories again. And yes, healing takes a lifetime, but there's a way in which we get narcissistically lost in the maze of the past and we're trapped. We can't find our way out. We keep repeating the same cycle again and again and again. It's a circle, right, that doesn't spiral, right? Who's been there and done that? Who's been there and done that, right? Who's been there and done that, right? Who's been there and done that? Right? Anyone been there and done that? Anybody? Right? Anybody who's been there and done that? We all have, right? In one way or the other, right? Can you feel that? Right? Been there, done that, right? Been there, done that. And there's value in approaching the past. And we can't get to the other side if we bypass the past, but that's not enough. It's insufficient. And actually, I want to add something to what we said last week, which is like wildly exciting. We've been talking about, right, well, you know what? Let me bracket that adding for a second. We'll get back to it. Let's stop there for a second. So that's the notion, right, of the past. Now, I want to add something to this in the form of a story with permission, okay? Is everyone doing okay? Let's go deep together. Let's create something new together, okay? So tell you a story, okay? And it's a story about unfinished business in the past, okay? So you can't bypass the past, but you can't get stuck in the past. We need to go to the past if there's unfinished business. And when there's unfinished business, it lets us actually get beneath the very structures of time, and we can actually find our way back and reconfigure the past. That's an enormously powerful idea. That idea is called, in Western literature, in its original phrase, and it appears in Sufism in one way and in Hebrew mysticism, and it appears in certain forms of mystical Christianity. I mean, it's an incredibly important idea. It's called teshuvah, which literally means to return. And the implication is to return to the past. I come back, right? I go back. It's a circle. I go back to a particular moment in time in order to relive, to re-experience that moment in time, to reconfigure it, but not to get stuck, but to reconfigure it and move forward. And if I have unfinished business in the past, I can't bypass it. I've got to go back and I've got to engage that business. And I want to tell you the story about this man who came to a master who was a teacher of my teacher's teacher. His name was the Holy Seer of Lublin. And they said he could see from one end of the world right to another. And he says, I'm here with my partner and we want to have a child, right? And she, Fagala, right, his partner says, I'm desperate. I absolutely, right? I want to have a child. Right? It's everything. And sometimes for us, a child is birthing a new and gorgeous project. And sometimes it's a incarnate physical child. And there's different kinds of children in the world, right? I want to have a child. And so this couple comes before, right, the great seer of Lublin, and they say, right, I want to have a child. And the seer looks at the man and he says, you have unfinished business, right? Right. And he says in Yiddish, he doesn't use the word unfinished business, but right, I see. He says, you were engaged once before, weren't you? He says, yes. He says, and you broke the engagement, didn't you? He says, yes. And he says, wow. Right. The Hasidic master, wow. Right. You're stuck. Right. Unless the woman with whom you broke that engagement will give you a blessing, right, to have a child, right? You can't have a child. So go find her. And he says, but master, I don't know where she is. Right? How am I going to find her? And the master says, go to the town of Ludomir, and there bring your wares and set up shop and find her somehow there. It makes no sense to him, but he lived actually not far from Ludomir when he was originally engaged to this woman. He remembers the marketplace there. He gathers up his wares. He tells his wife he's going. He travels to Ludomir. And he stays in Ludomir for 3 months. And every day he sets up his stall and he sells his wares, looking all the time, perhaps the next customer. And sometimes he feels someone brush him in the marketplace and he turns around thinking that it'll be her and it's not, or he sees someone over there and he sees her from behind and she turns around and it's someone else. And 3 months go by and he looks everywhere and he's up day and night. And finally he's completely dejected, right? He's completely right. He's just so sad. Obviously he wasn't worthy. And he wasn't able to find Sarah. That was her name, the name of his betrothed with whom he broke the engagement. And now it's the end of the marketplace and he's packing up and it's raining and everyone's got all their stalls unpacked and he's going to load up the last load. And the rain comes down hard and he sees a covering and he goes into the covering and it's a little dark and there's another person there. So he moves away. Right? Not to take their space. And the voice says, you're always moving away from me, aren't you? Right? It was her voice. Right? It was Sarah's voice. And he says, Sarah, I've been looking for you. I've been looking for you. And she says, I know. You can't find me where I am. He barely hears her. I've been looking for you. Right? And I'm so sorry, right? For the hurt that I caused you. And what can I do to make it up? And she says, what can you do to make it up where I am? But he can barely hear her. And he says, I desperately want to have a child. Please bless me to have a child. And she says, the only way I'll bless you to have a child is I want you to know that my brother, who is going to be your brother-in-law, is now marrying off a daughter. And he has no money. And you've been here for 3 months and travel now. And it'll take you all day and all night. And you'll get to that place where we once lived and knock on my brother's door and bring him all the money that you made as a dowry so his daughter, right, can set up her marriage. And with that gift to me, I bless you, right, to have a child. And he can't believe it. And he gets on his horse and his wagon and he begins to travel and he travels all day and he travels all night and he's splattered with exhaustion, with mud. And he finally gets to the town and he recognizes the road and he gets to the door of where the person who would have been his brother-in-law lives, right? And he knocks and he's completely covered with mud and exhaustion. And it's been 25 years. And he says, I'm here, right? To bring a dowry for your daughter who's getting married. And the brother doesn't recognize him. He says, who are you? I have no money for my daughter. Why are you mocking me, right? Knocking at my door at 2 a.m. in the morning. And he goes to throw him out. And he says, no, don't you understand? Sarah sent me. Sarah, your sister sent me. And his brother recognizes Yankala, who would have been his brother-in-law. And he says, what do you mean Sarah sent you? Sarah's been dead for 25 years. Right? She died just a few weeks after you broke her heart. And he gives him the money for the dowry for his daughter. And they celebrate the wedding together. And Yankala travels home. And his wife conceives. And they have a child who becomes one of the great masters of the hidden wisdoms. Right? Does everyone understand? Right? Can we feel it together? What's the story about? right? The story's about, right? The story's about unfinished business. And we have to go to the past. When we have unfinished business with the past blocks our future. We can't access either the present or the future. And unfinished business is always unfinished business with love. And if someone has unfinished business with us, we have to let them approach us and not become misers with our forgiveness. We have to let them approach us, and we have to give them our love. And anyone who approaches us with an open heart, and we don't sit and judge their open heart. If they say they have an open heart, we trust their open heart. We say we're willing to resolve the past. We give up being right. We give up being trapped like a rat in a maze in all of our yesterdays. We complete that unfinished business. We heal the traumas of the past, right? And we step full on, right? Full on, friends, right? Into the present. And the second form of science, not psychological science, is enlightenment science that we talked about last week in week 215. And enlightenment science, right? We step into the fullness of the present. And paradoxically, it's the fullness of the present when I actually enter into, and I want to feel with you what the fullness of the present means, right? The past is always, we're working with our separate self, with our personality. And we're trying to re-heal and re-narrate the story, right? The story of the separate self. In the present, we move into true self. And true self is the true self, which is the singular that has no plural. True self is the one true self. The total number of true selves in the world is one. And we all participate in that same true self, right? True self is the field of consciousness in which I step into that field of consciousness and I shut my eyes and the whole world disappears. And all that exists is pure consciousness and the utter depth and delight and rapture of pure consciousness. And I realize I don't need anything from the past. And I don't need to be filled with anxiety about what tomorrow will bring. I literally can just rest in the unbearable joy, right, of the present, right? The eternity that resides in the present, right? I engage in the act of nowing, right? Nowing is a verb, right? I'm here right now, in this second, right now. It's now in Florida, 2 o'clock and 13 minutes. So at 2 o'clock and 13 minutes in Eastern time in the United States, and whatever time you are around the world, we're here right now. We're not thinking about what we did in one mountain the first hour. We're not thinking what we're going to do in the next 7 minutes. We're here together and we're hearing each other. So if we can just enter that together, let's just find that together. Can we be in that together? Can we be in that like right now, right here, right now, right here? And we rest. Enlightenment says, rest, take refuge in the Buddha, right? Right now, right now. And all that ever exists from the perspective of enlightenment science, which is absolutely true, as is psychological science. But now we're in the present. All that ever exists is the present moment. The present moment holds the memory of the past, and the present moment holds the anticipation of the future. But all that ever exists is now. Here we are right now. And when I step into the now, right, my heart expands and I have the ability to time travel back into the past. But I also have the ability to take the next step. And so let's take the next step together. When I live in the eternity of the present, and remember, eternity is not everlasting time. The present's not everlasting time. The present is when you enter the fullness of the present, you enter the eternity that lives beneath time. I'm beneath the space-time continuum, right? I'm in eternity. How many people have ever felt that? Feel it right now. Just access it right now. Let's do a transmission right now. We're in eternity. We're underneath the past. We're underneath the present. We're living in eternal time in this moment when we drop in. And I realize that I'm not my body. I'm not my body. If I didn't have my body, I would still be here. If I didn't have my arm, I'd still be here. Right? I'm not my emotion. If I didn't have my emotions, as beautiful as they are, all my energy and motion, but without whatever particular emotion I have now, I'd still be here. Right? I drop my thoughts. right? My thoughts are moving around, but I get underneath my thoughts and I get underneath my body and I get underneath my emotion and I actually realize I am desire. I am consciousness. I am the entire field. And I am right now and right here, fully alive and fully awake. And all of eternity courses through me. And I'm not my body. And I'm not my emotions. And I'm not my thoughts. Right? I am the consciousness, right? The awareness, the love awareness that holds my body, that holds my thoughts, that holds my emotion. Right now, in this moment, right now, I am. The full eternity that resides in a moment. Wow. So that's enlightenment science. But then we step in, right? We realize, wow, just like there's a shadow to the past, the obsession with the past, the shadow of enlightenment science is that it actually doesn't actually allow me to do the healing work in the past the way I need to. And it doesn't allow me to hear the call of the future the way I need to, right? I get so entranced in the eternal present that when I experience enlightenment in its shadow form, the present becomes a present, which is the power of the now, the way it's often described today in books by that name, that excludes the past and excludes the future. And be here now comes to mean, right? I let go of all the past and let go of all the future. No, I let go of the repetitive maze of the past. I let go of the tyranny of the past, but I step into the past to heal, right? To complete my unfinished business. And I'm called by the future. And I'm literally called by the future. And the field of science that addresses the future, last week in week 215, we said evolutionary science. It's not quite accurate. Let's call it emergence science. Emergent science. And emergence is the experience of synergy. Emergent science that actually, right, when I emerge, something new emerges, right, which emerges, and it's more than the sum total of the past, right? A new whole emerges. And what's a new whole? A new whole emerges, which is greater than the sum total of the parts. The gas called hydrogen and the gas called oxygen come together. Neither is liquid at room temperature. Then a unique configuration, they come together, right? And then they turn into water. And water is emergent. It never existed before. So water doesn't come from the past. Water is the meeting in the present, right? That actually generates something undeniably new. So actually what happens is emergence is the call of the future. There's the one, there's the many, there's the creative advance of novelty. And novelty is, right, emergent science, right? Evolution called into the future. I'm called to the future. I'm delighted by the future. I'm ecstatic, right? I feel the energy of the future calling me. Yeah, how do you know? I'll just give you just a direct, if you're up for it, if you're available for it, with your permission, just a direct transmission of a knowing of the future. How do we know that death is not real? We know that death's not real, right? Not real in the sense that it's not the end, because we actually experience in us the actual anthro-ontological urgent need for a future. If we lose connection to the future, we're depressed. But if we sense there is no future, right, we collapse, we commit suicide. Right, in Japan this month, to talk about a tragedy around the world, Japan's lost significantly more people to suicide in the past month than it did to all of COVID. Right, suicide is rising all over the world, about 1 million last year, and rising, and depression is rising all over the world. It's actually the fastest growing disease in the world. And depression comes from an inability to hear the call of the future. I'm called by my future self, right? Let's feel that for a second. I'm literally and actually called by my future self. I've got to recover, we said last week, not just the memory of the past to organize my life. I've got to recover a memory of the future. And I've got to be able to respond to the call of that future self. I'm going to tell you, with your permission, just something kind of wildly shocking. In language mysticism, there's a 4-letter name of the divine. And that 4-letter name of the divine, right, reads, It's a yud. In Hebrew letters, it's a yud, like a Y. A hey, like an H. Then a vav, which is a V. Then another H. Yud, hey, vav, hey. Right? The 4-letter name. Thank you, Zohar. Yud, hey, vav, hey. And if anyone can capture actually how it looks, you'll see actually how they look, right? It's actually completely gorgeous, right? But Yud, hey, vav, hey, vav, hey, right? The second 3 letters is Hoveh, Hoveh, Hoveh. Hoveh means present. Yud, the first letter, which is a little small letter, is the glimmer of the future, right? Yud, hey, vav, hey. Yud, the first letter, is the future. So the first letter of the name of God, which is understood in the interior sciences to be the DNA of reality. The first letter is the future, and the second 3 letters, hey, vav, hey, is the present. So the name of God is the future that lives in the present. Isn't that shocking? Literally, the name of the divine is the future that lives in the present, the future that calls in the present. Wow. That's literally the name of the divine. Right? So the experience of being called by the name, right? My name, which is a name of the divine, and the name of God is the sum total of all names, right? Is the experience of being personally addressed by the call of the future. And the call of the future comes from my future self. Everyone has a different and a distinct call. So that experience of the future, right, is a first principle of reality. Right? We experience reality through the prism of the past, right? Enormously important. How does that work from an evolutionary perspective? The present inherits all the laws, all the breakthroughs of the past live in the present. Then in the present, there's a creative occasion. Well, Alfred North Whitehead calls it an occasion. There's an occasion of the present, which has received the past, which then the future enters into the present and calls the present into the future. That's the nature of reality, right? So DNA, for example, DNA holds, I had this wonderful conversation, right, over the weekend with Christina and Peter Fikowski, right, who's a physicist, right? And we were talking about DNA is the codification of the future at the level of genes. It's the call of the future at the gene level of reality, right? We can literally hear the call of future self. So, wow. So let's just go one last stage, okay? Let's go one last stage. One last big stage. So we're going to do a practice, and we're just going to we're going to close this first principles and first practices with a first practice, right? But just to open the first practice, Krista, give us a song, right? Krista actually wrote a song this morning, right? A couple hours ago, just spontaneously with a friend, right? And took some of the words we were talking about last week. So let's actually kind of see if we can kind of feel that. And then we're going to do a short first practice together, and then we'll conclude. Okay, so here we go. We ready? We ready to go inside? Are we good? Christina Amelon, take us inside whenever you are ready. Yay. Yeah.
Looking around in this crazy world, I know it can be hard. Dealing with outrageous pain right there from the start. Living our lives as our separate selves, it never seems enough. Responding to outrageous pain with outrageous love. It's the call of the future that brings me all this way. It's the call of the future that makes me want to say. It's the call of the future that brings me all this way. It's the call of the future that makes me want to say. I was running around in this crazy world, doing my therapy every day. But digging in the past and being in the now never took me home all the way. Wondering why I myself, still wrestling with life. But now I know that there's a way to heal. It makes me want to thrive. It's the call of the future that brings me all this way. It's the call of the future that makes me want to stay. It's the call of the future that brings me all this way. It's the call of the future that makes me want to stay. It's the call of the future that brings me all this way. It's the call of the future that makes me want to stay. It's the call of the future that brings me all this way. It's the call of the future that makes me want to stay.
Yes. Yes. The call of the future that makes me want to stay, right? That's like utter joy, right? If you want to understand, right, why suicide is rampant, it's because we've lost first values and first principles. There's no sense that my future is intrinsically meaningful. I've already done it all, right? I just keep repeating the same pattern again and again and again of utter futility. And the ideology of depression is futility, and the ideology of suicide is depression. Right? It's the call of the future that makes me want to stay. Right? It's not enough to go into the fullness of the present, which is enlightenment science. It's not enough to be reworking the trauma of the past. We need to step into Homo, amor science, emergent science, evolutionary science. And it's the call of the future, right? Beautiful, right? Thank you, thank you, thank you for that gorgeous, right, this morning, right? Spontaneously, right? That makes me want to stay. So let's do a practice, okay? Let's end with a practice. So let's do this together. We ready? It's the call of the future, right? If I lose connection to the call of my future self, I get lost in a blackness and a heaviness, right? In a depression, right? And a sadness. Who can find that? Just who can recognize this, okay? And if you're listening to a replay, when I say who can find it, I'm speaking to the chat box because lots of us are talking in the chat box. Who can feel that kind of that weight? And if you're listening, just, if I can, with your permission, just ask you directly, right? If you're listening to a replay or whether you're live, right? Can you find that in yourself, that heaviness, right? That uncomfortable, right, sense of malaise that we're not allowed to share with anyone because we're not supposed to have it anymore, right? But it's just always still there. Right? If we don't feel the call of the future, right? That is to say that the future needs something from me, that there's a memory of my future, right? That actually there's a gift that I have to give. And the way I hear the call of the future is through my unique self and my evolutionary unique self, right? Unique self and evolutionary unique self hears the call of the future and knows, and we're going to talk in much more depth about this next week. We're going to go into this, even deeper. We're going to stay deeply in this frame. But unique self is a sensory organ that allows me to hear the call of the future. And in the future, right, I hear the need of reality for my unique being, and the need of reality for my unique gift, and the need of reality for my unique presence, and the need of reality for my unique contribution. And I've got to be able to discern, right, what that is. And it's not, by the way, there's a narcissistic separate self-expression of this. What's my creative expression? It's not that, right? So I want to just give you a formula, which may help, and then we're going to do a practice. But here's the formula. The formula is, in order to kind of feel into, right, your unique gift and your unique call that comes from the future, and we're going to actually do a practice in about 2 minutes, but there's a formula. And the formula you need to know going in is you've got to identify first, what are you really good at? Right? What are you really good at? Whatever it is, and everyone's got something they're good at. 2, what do you love doing? 3 is what's most needed. Now, in different generations, there's different emphasis to those 3. So sometimes what you love most is most important. Other times, what you're best at is most important. In this generation, actually, the 3rd is most important. What's most deeply needed? This is not an ordinary generation. And often I speak to people sometimes even, in our close, right, community, right, who talk about unique self, but really you can hear it in the resonance. They're talking more about a separate self, ego fulfillment of some sort of, creative expression, which is beautiful. Creative expression is gorgeous, but that's not what unique self is. I want to just give you a really great example. When Israel was founded as a state in 1947, 48, after the Holocaust, you had doctors and lawyers and literary writers and philosophers. And what they all did is they started farms and they drained the swamp and they created crops and they built the first factories and the first structures of industry, because that was the only way that this nascent state of Holocaust survivors could actually survive. It was an incredibly poignant moment. And the unique self-expression then for a writer was to be a farmer, right? And that's why Israel was able to emerge, because everyone was responding literally to the call of the future, right, in that moment. And so at this moment in time, when we're poised between utopia and dystopia, what's the most effective altruism we can do? The most effective altruism we can do is to articulate first values and first principles. So to participate in that process in a pivotal and key role, right, is if we can do it, if we can take a seat at the table, if we can join the revolution in some way and contribute something to it, it doesn't matter how. It can be through, it could be through funding, right? We could join, right? We could join, become a member, or we could actually join and, call me or call Krista or call Christina Amelon and make a serious contribution. It could be through what, Joyce is doing an incredible job of this artistic editing. It could be through taking on a particular project, right? And actually donating time and energy, right? But not because it's my particular creative expression, although it will be that as well, but because it's so desperately needed now. I'll just tell you a little secret. This is a little dark Goffney secret. I hate writing. I don't like to write, but I prefer oral teaching, right? If it was up to me, I would only do oral teaching. I would never write a thing. And for a series of reasons, the need of this time was I had to force myself to write. And so I forced myself. I barely wrote anything in my 20s, barely wrote anything, right, in my 30s. And then I realized I must write, because it's what we need today. And I get up every morning and I write, and I don't love writing at all, right? But that's what's needed now, right? And my kind of intuitive nature and the core of my gifts are not in writing, right? I want to be with like gorgeous groups of people, talking, hugging, laughing, singing, teaching, right? Fully engaged, right? All day. And instead I get up and I sit and I write, right? Wow. Because there's three things. There's what you're good at, there's what you love, and there's what's needed. And those three come together. And if you want to do an exercise at home, right, where you are right now, we're all at home. We're all at home together, right? You can actually make 3 columns, and in one column put the things that you love. Second column, things that you're good at, and list 5 for each. And in the third column, put what's most needed. And then circle 1 through 5, 1 through 5, 1 through 5 in each of the columns. And then you'll actually get a sense of the call of the futures. That's one way to do it. That's one road in. That's one practice, right? Which is to actually make a chart with these 3 columns. And one column is, what you're great at, whatever it is. It can be something very simple, right? What you love doing means you do it if you weren't paid to do it, right? I do it if I wasn't paid to do it. And if I am paid to do it, I do it 1,000 times more than I'm actually paid for it. That's what I love. And 3, what's totally, absolutely needed at this moment between utopia and dystopia, and how I can take my seat at the table. That's one practice, and everyone can do that individually. I want to end, and I know we're way over time, so I want to just end with this last practice I want to invite us to do together, okay? Right, let's do this together. You ready? Let's do this together. So we have a practice that we call outrageous love letters. And it's a practice that we've been doing for about a decade. And it's a practice of accessing outrageous love in the cosmos, right? And feeling not the ordinary love, but actually the quality of outrageous love, or what Peirce called, right, and we called about a decade ago, evolutionary love, right? The love that powers evolution moving through you. and writing not as your small separate self, but writing as a unique expression of the entire field, what we call a unique self, and exaggerating, wildly exaggerating until you're accurate. Right? We've made ourselves so small, right? I think of that movie, the Shrinking Man. We're the shrinking man and woman. We've shrunk our identities. Remember what we said earlier? The reason human science works is because we're cosmic humans. So because we're cosmic humans, we can access not only the mathematical whole of the cosmos, we can access in the interior sciences value. We can access divinity. We can access the call of our future self. So I want to invite everyone, and we're going to put on a particular piece of music, and it's that piece of music you have ready, right, from the Cathars, right, who come from this tradition that we're talking about, this tradition of the temple and Eros, the temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, and its insides are lined with love. So we're going to get that piece of music ready. Let me know when you have it ready, beloved Christina Amelon. Just give me a ready when you have it ready, okay? So we're going to put that piece of music on, and what we're going to do is we're going to ask everyone to do two things. In the first 2 minutes, write an outrageous love letter from yourself to your future self, and ask your future self to speak to you. Just say, oh my God, I need to hear you. Shad, it was part of your prayer today. I need to hear you. I need to hear your voice. I want to talk to you, right? Zohar, was part of your prayer today, right? Write an outrageous love letter, right, from yourself to your future self, right? And ask your future self to speak to you, and write for really just like 90 seconds, not even 2 minutes, 90 seconds, but just write. And don't stop writing. Just start writing and just write. Just write, okay? Right? And ask your future self to speak to you, okay? Then in the finish that, I'll then speak and I'll say, okay, now do the second process. And in the second process, write an outrageous love letter from your future self to you. All right? Write an outrageous love letter from your future self to you. Does everyone get that? So it's 2 steps. So we're going to put on this music, this very, very beautiful music. Right? Step 1 is write an outrageous love letter from yourself to your future self, saying to your future self, talk to me, find me, I need you, right? I want to speak to you. And you can just write the same word time and again. I want you, I need you, I want to speak to you, right? Talk to me, right? Just 60, 90 seconds. But you're calling to your future self. And then when you finish, I'm just going to say, as the music's playing, I'm just going to say, second letter, right? From your future self to you, write an outrageous love letter from your future self to you. Is everybody ready? Here we go. I'm going to put the music on. And as soon as it goes on, get your pen, your paper ready. Not yet. Everyone ready? Everyone ready? Here we go. Go. Write an outrageous love letter to your future self.
Con lo voy a vender con lo voy a vender plantos
Just write. Ask your future self. I want to hear from your future self. Now, write an outrageous love letter from your future self to you. Write an outrageous love letter from your future self to you. You can put it in the chat box if you want. You're welcome to put it in the chat box. You can write it on a piece of paper or put it in the chat box. Anybody. Let's write it in the chat box so we can feel people and hear people. Let's see it inspire us.
Cisnas malauto digozo, cisnas malauto digozo, te farem
One more minute. Outrageous love letter from your future self to you. Oh my God. Oh my God. More seconds. Let's all come back together. Camera, bring us back in. Yeah. Let's bring us all back. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Outrageous love letter from my future self to me. That's a first practice. Part of my evolutionary unique self, part of my Homo amor, is always my future self. And at the very core of what we've been sharing here in Homo amor universalis, and Barbara Marx Hubbard, you're with us so deeply today. This practice and teaching that we talked about together of future self, so important. How many people were in Portland remember when Barbara and I talked about this? It was an incredibly important conversation. Like, wow, right? Like,